Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to this week's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys coming by to spend some time with me on the video. And know it's a big commitment usually watching these longer advanced bass fishing videos, so really appreciate you guys making some time out here today to watch it. Hope you enjoy everything. Guys, today we're going to be talking about different type of topwater lures that work good in the summertime of the year, sort of some advanced techniques for fishing these topwaters in the summer. Really, summertime is probably my favorite time to fish a topwater. There's a lot of different diversity and techniques. There's a lot of different topwaters that work based upon the conditions you're fishing. So what I've done here is I've laid out like a dozen of my favorite summertime topwaters, and I'm going to go through each one of these topwaters in today's video and sort of give you guys some tips and advice on when I like to fish them, under what conditions, and a little bit of maybe instruction as far as how to work each one of those. So we're going to get into that in today's video. Also, guys, just a quick housekeeping tip here we do before we start every advanced bass fishing seminar here. I know it's boring, you guys. A lot of you guys probably fast forward through it, but appreciate you guys listening. Just a big thank you to everybody that's taking time to subscribe here to the channel. I'd like to encourage everybody to do that. And guys, if you like advanced bass fishing and it's helping you out in your bass fishing, the best way you can show that is to just go into the links I put in the description and use and bookmark my tackle warehouse link for all your fishing tackle needs. I'll link all the baits we're talking about today in my tackle warehouse link, and the channel gets a small percentage of the commission. If you buy like a Zare spook, we get a little tiny percentage of the commission on that, so it's a good way to help the channel. Also, please check out our Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns that I got in the description, guys. These are breakdowns that I built for Fish the Moment. It's a real good resource to learn more about your favorite lake or a lake you've never been on. So I'll put all that in the description of the video. Really appreciate that. Okay, guys, topwater fishing is you can catch bass on topwater pretty much about any time the water temperature is over mid-50s. 55 degrees is sort of my cutoff. It's sort of my beginning part in the springtime of the year when I start fishing it, and it's the end time when I stop fishing it later in the fall. But in today's fishing, guys, we're going to talk about specifically the topwaters that work good in the summertime of the year, usually from about June until mid-September. This is when these will fall under here. You know, during the hottest period of the year. That's the main thing about it. So I'm going to go through each one of these, not necessarily in any order, but just some of the ones I've caught a bunch of fish on in the summertime. We'll get into that. Okay, guys, the first one let's talk about is the topwater frog. This is a well-known summertime bait. This is the Megabass big gabbit frog, which is really nice frog. It really super realistic looking. You can see that. It really walks really nice side to side. And that's the key in the summertime of the year. When you're frog fishing, there's two different type of frog fishing. There's the frog fishing that you do over thick matted vegetation. So say you guys are fishing like a lily pad field that has little bitty openings like that in it, or you're fishing over the top of some milfoil or hydrilla if you live like on maybe Lake Gunnersville or something. And then you got the different type of frog fishing where it's more of an open water or around like laydowns and stumps. So two different techniques that I like to fish that. Obviously, when you're fishing the matted vegetation, it's pretty simple. You just cast it out over those mats, try to bring it past the areas where there's a little opening, and just basically just reel it right through and let it stop in an opening. And once it gets like in an opening, maybe that big around, just leave the frog there and just like vibrate it, like twitch it like that. A lot of times they'll come up and hammer it. Now, one of the things also about frog fishing on matted vegetation, a lot of times you'll see a fish come up and they'll hump underneath it. It's like they move the water up underneath it, but they don't actually get it. And sometimes it's because the grass is so thick. One of the things that you can do with this that will really help you out is when you're frog fishing on a mat, always make sure that you have a punching lure, like, you know, some type of a creature bait, like on an ounce or an ounce and a half sinker. And if you see a fish moving under there or trying to get to it, or maybe a fish that blows up on it and misses it, take that punch weight and pitch it in the matted vegetation and let it go in that same hole. And 9 times out of 10, you're gonna catch that fish. But my favorite way to fish a frog in the summertime is shallow around shade and more open water. This is a great way to catch them all summer year. It's probably one of the most reliable ways to catch topwater fish for the people that know how to do it. And if you don't know how to do it, it's like this will be a good little study for you on it. But what you want to look for when you're fishing it in the more open water is it's all about shade. And wherever you can find shade is where you want to fish this. It can be shade that's getting thrown off from a corner of a dock. It can be shade from an overhanging tree that's coming off the bank. There could be a lay down tree or lay down log in the water, and there may be a little shade pocket that big on one side of the log. But you basically take this frog, guys, and you just throw it out there and just twitch it like a Zara spook. Just like twitch it where you get the frog moving back and forth like that. And the way you do it is just like working a walking topwater. Just throw it out there and just twitch it just like that. And one of the things that's gonna help as far as getting this thing to walk right is when you're walking your bait like that, always make sure that your rod tip is just barely above the surface of the water and you're jerking it down almost to the water. Because sometimes these frogs, they're hard to get. If you don't do that, if you don't put that downward jerk on it like that, a lot of times they just go forward through the water when you jerk it, if you try to jerk it sideways. So try to jerk it down and it'll go sideways back and forth like that. And depending upon the water clarity and the type of cover you're fishing, you have to really adjust your speed. If you're fishing in some fairly clean water, which I've caught a bunch of fish on frogs in clear water in the summertime, speed your retrieve up, work it faster through the water so they don't get a good look at it. If you're in a little bit more off-colored water, slow it down, give those fish a chance to find it and track it. But the main thing, guys, is just key on shade. You don't have to have cover. It helps if you got some shallow grass up on the bank or maybe a scattered lily pad here and there or a stump in the water, but you don't have to have that. I've caught just as many fish on a frog in the summertime going down banks that are like just rocky banks with, gravelly rocky banks. And there'll be one tree that's hanging over the side and it's throwing out a shade pocket about this big around. And I'll throw that frog in there and just work it through that shade pocket nice and slow. You can catch them on that. And the setup I usually use on it, guys, is I usually have 30 to 40 pound test Seagar Smackdown braided line. And I usually use it on a 7'2" Megabass perfect pitch rod. And again, I'll link all the equipment I'm talking about in my tackle warehouse link here if you guys are needing to pick some up. But another thing about the braid on a frog, guys, excuse me, is don't go too heavy. You hear a lot of people using like 50 and 75 pound test or 50 and 65 pound test braid on a frog. You don't need that. 30, I've never one time out of fishing frogs and braided line for 30 years, I've never one single time broke off 30 to 40 pound braid ever. And 30 or 40 pound braid, it's easier to cast. You can cast it farther, and I think it gives the frog better action. So that's the frogs there. Now the next lure, guys, is very similar to a frog, and it's actually called a frog. This is the Zoom frog or horny toad. Horny toad's sort of the same thing, but a frog and I think some companies make one called a ribbit frog, but these plastic frogs that are not, they're not a frog like this type of a frog. These frogs here have a tail on them that make noise, so you can reel them straight through the water, and they're like a subtle buzzbait. It's like, depending upon the type of toad that you're using, like this Zoom frog, it's a little bit louder. Horny toad's a little bit quieter. Different frogs have different levels of noise on them, but the plastic frogs like this, which are not, this type of a frog, the toad, is designed just to be reeled straight through the water, just like that. And these tails will kick and they'll bubble up water and make a subtle noise there. Now this is good in the same type of stuff, the same type of places that I just told you about the frog to begin, or about the frog like this to begin with. Same type of places are going to be working on the toad. The toad is one of my favorite things if I have to cover a lot of water that has a varying degree of different type of thicknesses to it. So say for example, I'm in a lily pad field, and part of the lily pad field is super tight and there's this little openings like this in it. And then you get to a section of the lily pad field where there's big openings like that. When you have that type of mixed cover density, throwing that frog is a really good way to catch them. And I usually use an EWG hook if I'm in really thick vegetation. But my favorite way to fish this frog like this is when I fish it just like a buzzbait in a little bit more open water. So I'll take the frog here and I'll throw it like down the edge of a grass bed, or I'll throw it on the edge of a lay down tree, or down the side, or down the corner of a dock. and I rig it up a little bit different. I want to show you how to rig it up here. Take a 4/0 straight shank Gamakatsu hook. We've talked about this in some of my other videos, and come through the bottom of the frog with it. Go about 2/3 of the way down and come out the bottom. And that way you're gonna have the hook exposed coming out the bottom of the frog. It's gonna look just like that. You got that hook coming out the bottom. And when you're fishing open water, guys, you never miss them like that. That's one of the downfalls about fishing a frog with an EWG hook in it, is you'll lose a lot of fish, but you're not gonna lose many fish with that hook, you know, pointed down like that. So these are the two really good summertime baits, toads and frogs. Okay guys, I'm gonna take a quick break and get a drink here, and we'll be right back. Okay guys, moving on. Now we're gonna talk about walking topwaters. This is a super spook here. This is a Megabass Giant Dog X. Guys, these are my two favorite walking topwaters based upon what I'm doing. I love this Heddon super spook, not the regular Zara spook. This is a super spook, it's a bigger one. And I also love the Megabass Giant Dog X. Megabass makes several different Dog X lines. They even make this one called a Mega Dog here. I'll show you how much bigger it is. This is the same type. Look at the difference on this, but this is the one I like for all practical purposes, which is the Giant Dog X. It's about probably 4 inches long. And there's two different scenarios where I use this. I'll use the super spook if I have to catch, or say if it's a little bit choppier out, say there's a little bit of a chop on the water, or if I'm fishing, you know, a body of water that I have to cover a tremendous amount of water, make super long casts, covering a lot of water. If I want something a little bit noisier, the big super spook is a noisy, wide walking topwater. It's just a real aggressive topwater, it's a real aggressive looking topwater when you work it. But the Megabass Giant Dog X, this is a subtle topwater. This is a calm water walking bait. It's the way this bait is designed. If you have a chop on the water, this Giant Dog X tends to nosedive, but if you got a flat, calm surface, this is where the Giant Dog X shines. It's like super subtle, quiet a little bit, and it's just a subtle walking topwater. So there are situations that both of them work. Now, as far as the conditions where a walking topwater works in the summertime, this is what you're looking for. A lot of it depends on the time of the year. It depends on the type of body of water that you're fishing. If you're fishing for largemouth and typical man-made reservoirs, the best place, there's two different scenarios where a walking topwater is going to work the best, and that's going to be with the super spook here. The first one is in low light conditions, not low light conditions like clouds and rain, because I have found that in the summertime of the year when it's hot, the fish don't react to clouds like they do in different times of the year, like spring and fall, but they do react better early and late in the day. So first thing I like to do with the super spook is I like to get out there right off the bat early in the morning, just after daylight, or fish it just before it gets dark. And I usually concentrate on any type of main lake or secondary point. A lot of those fish that are living on those points, they live on those points suspended deeper. They may be out deeper on the bottom of those points, but early and late in the day and at night, those fish will move up to the bank and will start feeding on those points. So you're catching them on that spook from some of those fish that are normally out there deeper, you know, during the bright part of the day. But basically just fishing, throw it to the bank, just work it with some type of a medium retrieve. I mean, just throw it out there just like a typical spook fishing, just medium retrieve, cover water, start about 50 yards before you get to the point, fish around the point, down the backside, go to the next one. Pretty simple. The other place that a spook really works really good in the summertime is around boat docks with shade on it. One of my favorite ways to catch them on a spook in the summertime of the year is to fish either floating or piling docks, completely concentrating on shade. So I'll pull up to a dock, like I got one coming up in front of me. What I'm looking for is I look for where the shade's getting thrown off on that dock. And that changes throughout the course of the day. It's gonna be different at 9 o'clock versus 1 o'clock, but I usually look to see where the shade's at. I'll move up next to it. I'll make a parallel cast down the side or the front of the dock where the shade's thrown off, sometimes in the slip itself, and work that spook, you know, super slow around the shade of that dock. And if there's one underneath there and that water's warm, they'll come out and just annihilate the thing. Now, the Giant Dog X, guys, a little bit different scenarios. There's two situations where a Giant Dog X is really gonna be good. It's by far the #1 smallmouth bait you can throw in the summertime. All you guys that fish up north, if you guys are fortunate enough to live around the Great Lakes or Lake Champlain or Lake St. Clair or something like that, when you get a flat day out there, I don't care if it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and there's it's 100 degrees out. If you got a flat day in clear water with smallmouth, get you a Giant Dog X and throw it out there and see what happens. It's the #1 smallmouth bait that you can fish unless you're spotlighting for bass. The big ones will hammer this thing. On into fall too, it even works into fall. Another situation where the Giant Dog X works good is if you have a lake that has a pretty good spotted bass population. So all you guys that fish some of those Northern California lakes, Ozark lakes, some of the lakes in eastern Kentucky, northern Georgia, all that type of deal, a Giant Dog X is really good in the summertime of the year, fishing it out off those main lake points early and late in the day. Sometimes, like we said, we're on the spook where those fish will come up to the bank early and late in the day. If you have a lake that has a big spotted bass population in it and you got some pretty clear water, like water visibility over 4 or 5 foot, you can take the Giant Dog X and you can fan cast it deeper on those points, and it'll bring those big spotted bass up out of that deeper water if you have a calm day. So that's even during the day. It's better low light conditions, but you can still catch them up in the day on the thing. So that's the walking topwaters there. Okay, the next one, guys, moving on here. Let's talk a little bit about another favorite summer lure is the popper. Guys, a chugger, this is the Megabass Pop Max. The old Pop-R works really good. There's a lot of different Japanese variations of a popper, but an old chugger or a popper like this is a great summertime lure because the thing about a popper is you can work it in a lot of different speeds. You can fish this thing where you just bloop and let it set forever, bloop, just let it set forever, or you can work it real fast through the water, just depending upon how you want to do it. But one of the ways that I have caught more bass than anything in my life is to get out early in the morning in the summertime of the year, find you a riprap bank. It doesn't matter if it's a dam riprap, a bridge riprap between a boat dock, riprap that's like a break wall, any type of riprap. You get out there early in the morning and throw this popper right up against those rocks, and it's a great way to catch them. It's gonna work all the way up until the sun starts hitting that bank, and then it's pretty much over with. But a popper on riprap, guys, in the summertime, I have caught so many bass on it. It's probably one of my favorite ways to catch them on a topwater in the summertime. Be honest with you guys, aside from that, I have not done that good on a popper unless it falls in those conditions that we just talked about there. Another one is a little bit different. A lot of people don't consider a good summertime topwater, but it's some type of a small prop bait, guys. Any type of a prop bait, some of them come in a shad variety, some of them come in like a perch pattern, but a prop bait is really, really good on those lakes where you have large perch populations. If you have, and you guys have watched the channel, you hear me talk about it all the time, perch will spawn all summer long. As long as that water temperature is over 70 degrees, the perch may spawn 2 or 3 times during the summer. They're constantly up spawning. And they live in that shallow water. And a little prop bait is one of the best ways that you can catch those fish, those bass that are up, cruising the bank looking for these spawning bluegills. So what you want to look for is go back into those coves, the same type of coves that you guys fished when the bass were spawning. Flat coves, gravelly type, some type of hard bottom, and get in there with the prop bait and concentrate on shady banks again. Little areas that have shade coming off of it. Doesn't have to have shade on it, especially if you get like to the back of a cove. You can fan cast all the way around the back of it. But just work it just with short tips of the rod. It goes zit, and it goes zit, let it set there, zit, let it set there, zit, let it set there. And usually they'll hit it, as it's standing still. And also, guys, this is well known. If you fish Florida, prop bait is really good to fish around any shallow grass all summer long, low light conditions in Florida. So that's a really good one there. Okay, the next one is sort of similar to that. This is a little bit different we talked about last week. This has sort of become one of my favorite topwaters the last year or so. This is that Megabass Cicada looking bait here. This thing right here, this little cicada bait is an excellent choice in the summertime of the year. Obviously, if you have cicadas or bugs or mayfly hatches coming out, anytime that you have those type of areas that have overhanging trees with shade in it, and you've got a lot of bug activity, whether it be mayflies or frogs or just activity on the surface, try this little Megabass Cicada bait. I'll put it in the link in the description of it there, and just reel it along the water. It just sort of goes like this through the water. It's like an old head and crazy crawler. I've caught quite a few on that. I haven't, to be honest with you guys, this is fairly new, so I've only got like a season and a half behind it, but I have had some pretty good days on that. Okay, one more and then we're gonna take a little break. The next one is a good summertime lure, and this is gonna be for all you guys that fish herring lakes, like, you know, Lake Hartwell, Lake Murray, anywhere, you know, Lake Lanier, anywhere where you have herring, blueback herring is your primary food fish. Any type of a pencil popper like this is gonna be really good. Pencil popper, it doesn't look like much, guys, but there's something about bass on a herring lake that love a pencil popper. So if you have a herring lake out there, one of the best ways you can catch them in the summertime is get out there on those long flat points on the lower end of the lake where it's clear, and just throw this thing all over that point. Pay attention to see if you see any like surfacing fish that are busting shad. That'll give you a good indication. If you see, say for example, you're out in 15 or 20 foot of water on one of those flat clay points and you see a fish bust behind you, maybe 50, 100 yards away, go over to that area and start throwing a pencil popper all around that area. There's something about a pencil popper that will draw bass out of deep water on a herring lake. You can catch them on threadfin shad lakes too, but they're really good around herring lakes. Okay guys, I'm gonna take a little break. Gonna get back and we got 2 more lures to talk about. And then we're gonna wind it up with some, leave you guys with some good info towards the end, so I'll be right back. Okay guys, we're back, getting ready to wrap it up here. Got 2 more categories here that I'm gonna give you some info to sort of leave you with before we wind the video up. And if you hear some heavy equipment in the background, guys, my neighbor's doing some work on their yard, so it's sort of hard to get away from this. I'm out here in the garage and it's freaking super hot out here. I had to open the door, so you may hear a little noise there. Okay, the last one, guys, we're gonna talk about are buzz baits and the Whopper plopper. Now, there's 2 different type of buzz baits I fish in the summertime based upon the time of the summer. My first favorite one, guys, is a little small buzzer, like a little 1/8 ounce or 1/4 ounce buzzer, little tiny buzz bait. A lot of people don't fish this. But guys, this is a really good bait in the summertime of the year if you have a lake that has any type of shallow vegetation. So if you've got shallow vegetation like water willows or gator grass or shallow milfoil or hydrilla, any type of lily pads can be good. Any type of vegetation that is in shallow water, especially tide river, guys. If you guys fish a tidal river, a little buzz bait around shallow grass in the summertime is deadly. It's like, I don't know what it is about it. You can catch them on a little buzzer when they won't hit a big buzzer, but I've caught a ton of fish on a little buzzer that time of year. But the bigger buzzers, guys, start working good in late summer. Like when you start to, like when we get into the month of September, the first thing that comes to my mind is going bigger with my topwaters. It's like there's a transition that happens during the month of September. And there's 2 lures that I fish in the first part of September when technically it's still summer. It's still, we get 100-degree days here in Missouri in early September. Is the Whopper plopper and a big buzz bait. This is the Megabass Jamaican boa. It's a 3/4 ounce buzzer. It's got a really big blade on it. This is the Whopper plopper 130. Again, link everything in the description here. These guys in late summer, these are some of the best things that you can fish. Both of these lures, guys, the big buzz bait and the Whopper plopper, it's all about covering water. It's like it's power fishing to the max. There's no subtlety about it. There's no fine point about it. What you want to do with both of these lures in the summertime of the year, pick out one major creek arm. You know, every lake's got them. Every lake's got a bunch of creek arms, but usually a lake has 2 or 3 major creek arms in it. Go back into that creek arm, go back probably about 1/4 of a way back in that creek arm and put your trolling motor down and start fishing everything. Just go in and out of the cuts and coves, go all the way back to the creek and go out the other side. Rotate between a Whopper plopper and a big buzz bait. And guys, that is a tournament winning deal. There's a ton of tournaments that get won like that. What you're doing is you're capitalizing on a population of fish that are actively feeding, and I call them, they're sort of like scavengers. There's a population of bass in the late summertime that are up and they live in that shallow water, and it doesn't have to be dirty, guys. This will work in clear water. I've caught them in Lake Mead doing this. I've caught them in Table Rock. Anywhere this is going to work. But there's a population of those fish in the summertime that they're hunting for whatever they can get. They're hunting for a bird in the water, they're hunting for a frog in the water, they're hunting for a shad, they're hunting for a perch, they're hunting for anything that's in the water. They're just up cruising. You can see them cruising a lot of times. And a big Whopper plopper and a big buzzbait are two of the best lures to catch them into those situations there. So that's my lure selection, and I sort of want to leave you guys. We'll talk some generalities here about summer fishing with it. One of the things that you're going to find about topwater fishing in the summertime, for the most part, is you need to work your topwater lures pretty fast. Now, the only exception to that would be if you're fishing like a little chugger in some tight shade, or if you're fishing a frog or something like that. But a lot of times, if you're fishing a walking topwater, a Whopper plopper, you know, buzzbait, anything like that, speed is going to get you a lot more strikes. Speed will also get you a lot more strikes if you've got sparse cover. If you have cover to fish a topwater around, that's normally when you have to slow it down unless you're trying to create a reaction strike. But if you're fishing bare banks, a lot of it is speed. So try to use like a medium to fast retreat. Also, another thing on topwater is the cadence is really important as far as having some type of an erratic retrieve to it. So you always, like for example, if you're working your Zara spook like that, don't just be uniform work it. Try to work it like this for a little bit, then speed it up for maybe 2 or 3 tips, and then maybe slow it down, let it stop. Try some variation in your retrieve. A lot of times that's going to trigger your topwater bites. Another thing you'll find out about topwater fishing, you're going to get more bites early in the morning and late in the evening, but you're going to get bigger bites during the day. And this is usually what happens where guys fishing them in the summertime, is they'll start out the first 2 or 3 hours of the morning throwing the topwater, and when that sun hits the water, they put it down. But if you are getting some bites early in the morning on a topwater, a lot of times if you just don't throw anything else, say for example, if you've got a Zara spook on there and you put that thing on and you throw it all day long, you're going to catch your bigger ones during the middle of the day, even in the summertime. Might not get a lot of bites, but you definitely can catch some big ones. Line is another important consideration with it. The only things that I use braid with, guys, are the frogs. Everything else, I usually use monofilament, although I will use fluorocarbon sometimes on the Whopper plopper. One of my favorite ways to fish a Whopper plopper is I put it on my flipping stick, and I'll put 25 pound test Seaguar and Vizex line on it. I've had some really good success with that. But if I'm fishing anything else, like the chuggers, the spooks, the prop baits, I'm usually using anywhere between 12 to 20 pound test mono with it. That's worked pretty good with me. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed it. That's just some of the baits that I've done the best on. Like I said, it's a real topwater fishing. One of the things you'll find out about in the summertime, it's very inconsistent. It's like sometimes they want it, and sometimes you can't hardly get a bite on it. A lot of it just depends on the mood and the personality of the fish. But at times, it can be a really good way to catch them in the summertime, especially if you don't like to get out there and fish deep. And who doesn't love catching them on topwater? It's a fun way to get a bite. So anyway, guys, I really appreciate you guys sticking around for the seminar, and I hope you learned something from it. Like I said, I'll link everything in the description we talked about, my tackle warehouse link, and we'll see y'all next week.